Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Paul. You know, I have heard it said that the road to success can be a torturous journey, and I actually kind of cleaned it up, because what I've really heard is that the road to success can be a bloody path. I personally can identify with that. First of all, we must face all sorts of external roadblocks, such as demands of other people, saturated markets, finances, and on and on and on. Today, however, we are not going to talk about external obstacles, but rather internal obstacles, the one we feel almost helpless in managing. I'm thinking about the fear of failure and the need to feel like you must somehow measure up to your own outrageous standards. My guest is an expert on managing mental toughness and coping with the fear of failure. Dr. Haley Perlus is a highly sought-after performance coach for athletes and for leaders in corporations. Her list of clients is really quite impressive, as you will find on her website when you look in the show notes of the section of the podcast. This show, I want to make sure, is for everyone, no matter your role in life. Mental toughness is essential, and mental toughness can be learned, and Dr. Perlus will tell us how we might find ways to master it. So let's bring our guest on the show. Haley, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. This is a fun topic. You and I chatted briefly, as I usually do with my guests, and athletes and fear of failure and need to succeed. And, you know, it's really quite apparent in my family. As most of our listeners know, I have a son that plays professional baseball. And, you know, that's one where people love to say 7 out of times you fail. Well, that's only for your most exceptional athletes. It's really more like 7.5 times you fail to be, you know, just like an average athlete. It's a game of failure. So, we've sort of lived in that zone. So I have some kind of personal familiarity with the subject, which we won't talk about my son much, but just to let you know, I'm kind of in there with you. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, you know, it's like baseball, but life can be a failure-oriented business or process. And I think it's just part of the game. But we all want to be perfect. And I like striving for perfection. I do. I don't want to be anything but perfect. But as soon as we start demanding perfection of ourselves, we start adding unnecessary pressure. And I love the way you introduced this topic, because we do have external pressures and external demands and roadblocks. But we also have those internal pressures and internal demands. And I do have high expectations. I strive to be perfect, but the demand of it is unnecessary and can only do more harm than good.
Do you think, Haley, that we, out of survival, we live somewhat almost in a state of denial of our less than perfect, our fear of failure, that we just sort of push that aside and it just gets buried deep in our psyche to where we can hardly even access it without a professional like yourself or a psychologist, that we don't like to admit that we're afraid?
It depends on the person. I believe that there are many people who don't want to admit that they're afraid. And then there are many people who that's all they talk about is their fears and their faults and why they're not good enough. I think it goes both ways.
Okay. You know how I want to begin our time together? You gave me a quote that I just fell in love with, and I would really like you to flesh out this quote. And you said this: "You are no more or less than you think you are at this very moment." I love that. You are no more or no less than you think you are at this very moment. That's powerful. That has a lot to do with self-understanding, doesn't it?
It does, and thank you. And I will say that there's a lot of expressions and quotes that aren't mine, but I do take full credit for that one.
Well, it's a good one. It's a good one. Make sure you put it in your book.
Yeah. To me, when I teach just today, I was giving a training to a group of 7 people about creating energy. And I've created this concept in my mind of, how to create optimum energy. And it starts with our thoughts. And our thoughts, every single one of our thoughts, will have an impact on our emotions. Now, our emotions that subsequently, influence our thoughts, but every thought we have has an impact on our emotions, which then alters our body, our heart rate, our muscle tension, the neurotransmitters and chemicals and hormones that are released, which then influences our behavior, our performance. So when I say we are no more, no less than what we think we are right now, what we're doing right now, how we're behaving, the actions we're taking is a direct result of what we're thinking in the moment.
I love that. And it's a regressive or progressive. I've never heard of a progressive spiral, but I'm making it up. A regressive spiral or a progressive spiral. The regressive spiral is thinking bad leads to feeling bad, which leads to thinking bad, which leads to feeling bad. The opposite, if I feel confident, if I think I'm confident, then I will feel confident. And if I feel I'm confident, I begin to think confident. So it just begins on, it all depends on where we start, doesn't it?
I agree. It does. And so one of the greatest things that we can do is learn how to develop unshakable confidence. So this is the confidence that doesn't come and go with the results, because sometimes we can't control all of the results. But it's the confidence that stays with us about our journey, our process, our effort, which is really the only thing that we can control.
Oh, so are you familiar with Viktor Frankl's "What is the man's meaning for in search of meaning"? What is it? What is the title?
No, I don't know.
Now I've screwed it all up. Do you remember, Paul?
Search of man's meaning for life.
Yeah, in search of man's meaning for life. But anyway, he just said, circumstances are not what bring us down, it's how we deal with them. And that came out of a Nazi prison, was when he made those quotes. It is about how we deal with it. Let's get right into, probably, I would guess, I'm reluctant to say the most influential or the most anything, because depending on the situation, there's always something that's more than the most was yesterday. But I feel like we're about to engage in what most likely may be one of the most common performance roadblocks, and that is the fear of failure. Our egos are so fragile. We are, just walking on thin ice, and any kind of failure seems to strike right at the very core of identity. Can you tell me what's going on with the fear of failure in your professional mind?
What it means, or why we're so obsessed with it?
Yes to both. Yes to both. I love both of those.
Well, what it means is it really depends, I believe, on your situation. I mean, it could be, competition. So failure is anything, and it really depends on how people define it. Some people define, if I didn't win, then I failed. Second place is first loser type of thing.
Yep.
So that's, it really depends on what you're looking at and what that failure is, if it's competition or if it's you striving for your own personal goal and didn't achieve it in the time frame or the exact perfect journey you thought you would achieve it. So to me, failure is anything that's not considered to be perfect in a lot of people's minds. And that's where we go wrong, because life is not perfect. And the reason why fear of failure is so big, because we make it so big. When we really look at it, baseball is a great example. I mean, it is a failure-oriented sport. We fail more times than we succeed. Actually, unless you are, the most consistent top performer, everyone fails more than they succeed, I think. In sales, I work with a lot of people in sales. They get the answer no a whole lot more than they get the answer yes.
Yeah,
but
so it's...
learn. Yeah, go ahead.
So how do we manage that fear? What is it that we can take it and how can we use it? How can we sort of, there's some positive things that we can do with failure, and there's also the negative things that encumber us and keep us from moving forward. What are your suggestions on managing this fear?
Right. So the most often one that we hear about, which I'm just going to mention and then move on to something different, but the most often one is what can we learn from it, right? Like failures are learning opportunities. And I don't want to disregard that because it is true. However, what I like to do in my consulting practice is very action-oriented. And so I think about changing the mindset. It's not about being perfect, because anything less than perfect is a failure. It's about being sometimes and oftentimes the best recoverer. So when I do have a failure, how am I best going to recover? Again, my background is sports psychology, and this is something that we can all learn from. In sports, the best athletes are not the perfect athletes. The best athletes in any sport that stands on top of the podium is the one that best recovers from mistakes, that best recovers in comparison to other people and themselves. So what I do in my consulting practice is I talk about how to be the best recoverer. And that, I believe, helps us kind of move away from this fear of failure. Because now I'm focusing on how to, of course, I'm going to strive for perfection again, but understanding it's not going to it's not going to happen. So I'm just ready to recover, when I need to.
I absolutely love that. I've seen a couple of documentaries on athletes, on Derek Jeter and on Tom Brady. And Derek Jeter, it was, I think, a 7-episode sort of series on ESPN Plus. And he, at the end of every season, whether he won the World Series or not, he just forgot about it. All he could think about was winning the next year. It's all about next year. And so when they didn't do well for a number of years, he still kept that front of mind. That was, so it feels like a recovery, like we have to do better than we did this year, and we have to do something. And he was very positive about that. And then also, I don't know if you saw Man in the Arena. I mean, on Tom Brady. It is a fabulous. It's a fabulous series because it talks about his many successes, but it talks about his many failures. And it talks about how he overcame the failure and how he dealt with it and what he did with it and how it motivated him. And it was quite inspirational to see, and how he wasn't all, this is, I don't know if it has much to do with our show, but it wasn't all about him. It was about the team. He's a very team-oriented player. And, he's one of the few athletes who walk on the field that when he walks on the field, everybody else on the field gets better. And it's not just because of his presence, but because of what he does. And so he's always doing what you're saying, preparing yourself for the next phase.
Right. Now, I'll be honest, I think there's definitely a moment where we can and will be upset when we're not doing our best. When people come to my consulting practice, they're often not coming to me because everything's going great. Right? They're often coming because they're not happy, and they want me to help them move forward. But before I can help them move forward, it's okay to be upset that we'll just use the word failed, that you failed. If we're upset, it means you cared. It means you believed you could do better. So now you actually are motivated, you care, and you have confidence because you believed you could do better. Let's grab onto those things. If someone is not upset because they failed, then I'm wondering why they're doing that activity in the first place.
As I was reading through some of your blogs, you mentioned, used another verb, but I'm using the word embrace. You talked about how important it is to embrace your fear.
Yes. Yeah, embrace. There was one athlete who I was working with who was really worried about hurting himself, and he wanted to move on. But before he could move on, he had to accept the fact that he was afraid.
That he was
that he was afraid.
Afraid. Okay.
I was actually just working with an 8-year-old female hockey player 2 weeks ago about the exact same thing. She was afraid to fall down. So we had to kind of create space for that, but then we don't want to sit on it. Then we want to move forward, and we want to talk about how to be the best recoverer. If you fall down, how to get back up and immediately recover. And then all the skills that you already have in place that you can rely on. That gives you the best probability of even though we're not demanding perfection, that gives you the best possibility of being as perfect as you can be.
I see.
So the next shot, the next day, the next task, the next call, the next workout, the next meal, whatever it might be, you go to that next place with confidence instead of worrying about the failure that you just had.
I know confidence is a big word with you, and we're going to talk about confidence and control a little bit later on in the show. I'm thinking, as you're describing, is there a difference from recovering from your failure and learning from your failure? Is there a different mindset approach to that?
That's a great question. And I do see them a little bit differently, and I'll share with you how. If I have a failure, in the moment, I may not be in a place to learn from it. So I'm going to be more focused on how to just, either fix it and move, fix that specific mistake that I made, or just recover and get back on the path of success. But I will most likely, when I'm in a better mood, a more calm space, clear-minded, then I can go back and assess and learn from it, see what I can do differently next time.
What do you do to learn from it? Do you journal? Do you write about it? Do you meditate on it? What is the process you use for learning from fear of failure?
For me personally, and then for myself, and then I guess it's the same for what I share with people that I work with. It's a couple of things. I really want to take a little bit of an inventory about the things that I can control and the things that I cannot control. And I know we're going to talk about control later, but it really is important because when I'm learning from my own mistakes, the things that I cannot control are irrelevant. The things that I can control is what I need to be able to focus on. And then from there, I replay it. I visualize. I go back in time in my mind. How could I have done things? I ask myself 2 questions. First is, what did I do well? So even though I didn't like the outcome, and even though it was a failure, still, what did I do right? What did I do well? And then, how can I do better? But I have to maintain focus on the things that I can improve upon. Because if I'm focusing on all the things that I can't change, it doesn't really help.
How do you determine what it is you can change and you can't change? I know we're getting deep, but you're really intriguing me here.
And you're asking some really intriguing questions. I give you credit. You're really making me think, which I love. So I keep coming.
Okay, so the question was, now I've forgotten my question.
How can I decipher between what I can change and what I cannot?
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah. So if I'm in a room, I'm part of that room, and so there's always something that I can do to change the room. But I'm not going to focus on the piece of furniture, or I'm not going to focus on another person in the room, because that I can't change. But to change the entire picture, I can change something within myself, which then sets energy out
right
to change the entire room.
Right. You can come up with you can exhibit a warm, inviting, engaging presence that sort of sets everybody else up into that same sort of feeling or sort of approach. That is something you can control. I wanted to talk about control later, but since we're on to it, I have to mention in Stephen Covey's 30-year-old or 40-year-old brilliant book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, talked about two circles. He talked about the circle of concern and the circle of influence, and he would draw a large circle on a flip chart, and he called this the circle of concern. And then he would draw a much smaller circle inside the circle of concern that he labeled the circle of influence. And he says, as long as we focus on the circle of concern, which we have no influence over, our circle of influence diminishes, that we have less and less influence. But if we focus our attention on our circle of influence and sort of ignore or deal with the concerns that we have no control over, that our circle of influence will grow and will eventually outgrow the circle of concern, where we're much less concerned about things that we have nothing to do with, and we're focusing on energy on what we can influence. Does that fit into your paradigm?
Absolutely. One thing that you liked that we mentioned yesterday, when I was talking about the rain, I can't change the rain, even though I might be concerned about it, but I can step outside and put on a raincoat and change the whole experience of the rain. That's
a perfect example. Yeah, I love that. I want to mention something that goes way back, and I don't know if I'm going off topic or not, but I think it would be very interesting, and I would love your feedback on it. I heard an interview years ago with Joe Montana after all of his Super Bowl wins. Mm-hmm. And then I have checked this out because I have acquaintances with elite athletes. My son is a professional baseball player, so I've met several elite athletes. And, almost to a person, they agree that, with the Super Bowls that Joe won, Joe said his goal, believe it or not, this is going to sound odd to a lot of people, his goal was not to win. That wasn't his goal. His goal was not to lose. That was what drove him, not losing. He cannot take wins last 2 weeks and you're thinking about next year. Losses last a lifetime.
Interesting.
What do you think? Does that strike anything in you? I found this with superior athletes I
would really want to have a conversation with him to dive in deeper because, and again, sometimes it's just semantics, but searching to win is me constantly looking forward at the finish line. Being motivated not to lose is looking backwards to make sure someone's behind me so that I'm not last. I don't think that is what he meant.
No, I don't think that's what he meant either. I agree. I don't think that's what he meant. He just meant that it has to do with the impact of the fear of failure, and it has to do with knowing how that's going to impact him for a long time, and he doesn't want to have to deal with that.
I will say this. It was interesting. I was part of a podcast earlier this summer, and this came up. It was the podcast Spartan Up, and this came up too. And I hear that all the time. I whatever happens, I don't want to lose. But Joe Montana has lost. I mean, he's won a lot, but he also has losses. So he has, even though he says that, and I applaud him for it. And amazingly enough, I actually had the privilege. I was speaking at a conference that he was the keynote for many years ago now. But so I thought he was wonderful and brilliant, and I loved listening to him speak. But there are a lot of athletes who, even though they say they will not lose, it's not an option. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because I see nothing wrong with it, it's part of the game. So even though we don't want it, we still have to learn to live with it.
Yeah, like they say, that's why you play the game. Otherwise, why play?
That's why you play the game.
Yeah.
So I don't think I want to make light of failure, in all honesty. I don't want failure to be such a big it to be such a big roadblock. I want to make light of it. Yeah, we're striving for perfection. There's going to be failures along the way. And when that happens, we quickly recover, getting right back on, not even the horse, any horse of success. You just get right back up and you have a success. And then there are definitely moments when you're in the right headspace and emotional space where you can go back and really assess that mistake to see what you can learn from it.
Do you have, or do you use a set of criteria, or, forgive me for using a list, but a list of habits that one can use to adopt this recovery mentality? Do you have ideas on that?
I have a very simple, it's two things. One, two strategies, I should say. So one strategy is whenever I'm working with athletes, and when I say athlete now, I'm really sport, fitness, wellness, business. When I'm working with people in my consulting practice, one of the very first things, if not the first thing that we do, is we pull out who they are when they're their best self. And it's not a visual, it is 3 specific words. And I really like using these words because these 3 specific words are a combination of their strengths, it's a combination of their values, it's a combination of their purpose when they pull them out. So when they have a failure and they need to now recover, they look at their list of 3 words and they immediately choose one that they can highlight, that they can move forward with.
Once again, tell me the 3 words so we all remember them.
Oh, no, they're whatever you come up with for yourself. So your 3 best words, the 3 words that best describe you.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So for me, I use the word bright. It's like I have a big sunshine over my mind, body, and soul.
Not that you're smarter than the average bear?
No, definitely not, because I don't think I am, but I do think I'm bright. I do think I have the energy.
Okay.
I'm also curious as opposed to judgmental. So I'm in tune. I want to listen. I want to ask questions, even though I may not like the answers. And the third strength of mine, my 3rd best word, is I listen. I actively listen to what you're telling me, but also to what I'm telling myself. So if I have a mistake, if I make a mistake, if I'm having a failure, if I find myself down and out, one of the best ways, because I have 2, one of the best ways is to look at my 3 best words and choose one to act on. So if it's bright, this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I had a keynote to deliver first thing Monday morning. I did not sleep well, did not feel my best, and I didn't follow through on my morning. I woke up probably 10 minutes before I was going to give this keynote. It wasn't good. And I looked at my 3 best words, and I went outside, and I put my face in the sun, my feet in the grass, and I let myself become bright. And then I went and I performed my keynote. I recovered from my morning, and I went and I delivered a powerful keynote. Sometimes I'll look at my list and I look, I'm being judgmental. So I'll just start asking questions. I'll turn my curiosity back on and just start asking questions to myself, to other people. Or I'll just start listening. Can I say shut up? I'll just be quiet and I'll just start listening to what other people are saying around me. So I get out of my own head of failure and I bring one of my best words back, listen, and I just start listening. That is me recovering from a failed moment or a bad moment.
Haley, those are brilliant. I absolutely love that. That 2.5 of the 3 could be my 3 words: curiosity and listening, and bright. The only thing about bright, and my audience is going to laugh at me, I think sometimes I'm smarter than the average bear. And
you are smarter than the average bear. There you go.
But it means that I will go to meditation and reflection and thinking, and that is a very strong actor in my life. Boy, I love the 3, picking your 3 strengths or your 3 go-tos, and in choosing which one you are going to deal with. What I want to do now is I want to take a break, and then we're going to come back and jump right into this, okay?
Wonderful.
Hi there, this is Charlie Hedges with the Next Chapter with Charlie, and I want to thank you for listening. And a special shout out to our guest, Dr. Haley Perlus, who is a coach for dealing with, for athletes and business people, dealing with the internal struggles that keep you from success, fear of failure, sort of goals that are unachievable, and she helps with managing this. And so far, Haley, you've been worth the price of admission. It's been great stuff. I have 2 questions, and we're going to come off the wall. I want to get personal. Don't ask me. I'm not going to get too personal. But I would love for you to tell me about a time, because you're a dancer, a skier, you've performed athletically, you performed in speeches and in client situations where, you know, there are great opportunities for failure. I'm curious, can you tell me about a time when you personally had to overcome your fears and move to a state of improved mental toughness?
Yes, and it really, the biggest failure that I experienced actually didn't happen in sports. It was when I was going through my PhD, when I was getting in graduate school. I almost got kicked out of my program. And it wasn't because, we talked about being bright. It wasn't because I wasn't bright. I was smart. But I just had very different intentions for my education than my advisor had for me. And long story short, I was called in 2 years into a 4-year program, and my advisor shared with me that I wasn't doing any of the requirements that she wanted, because I didn't want to do a whole lot of research. I mean, I was minoring. My minor was in statistics because it was just something I had to do, but I was much more of wanting to go and teach and practice. I wanted to learn the research and then go use it. I didn't necessarily want to conduct research. And so I was told that I wasn't doing a good enough job. I was told that I wasn't doing the job that I signed on for, and if I didn't change my ways, to probably go and find another program. And I'm already 6 years into graduate school by now, and I only have 2 more to go. And,
oh my goodness.
No, I didn't get kicked out.
Obviously, you've got the doctor in front of your name.
But I remember coming home and just devastated and crying. And I called my father, who is by far the greatest coach I've ever had in my entire life, still do. And he taught me a really valuable lesson. And he understood that I wasn't getting what I wanted, which is to do more, practical stuff. But he really helped me just for a moment get out of my own self, my own, goals, and just for a moment, just with kindness and generosity, think about what it is that my advisor is looking for in her own life. So because we're all in this together, but we also have our individual goals. And basically what he helped me to do, which is to recover from that situation, was to really have an understanding of what she wants. And then I was able to propose something where I definitely gave her what she wanted. I ended up doing more research and following that protocol. But I did it in a place where she then also gave me a little bit. And I was able to teach some of her classes for her.
Oh.
And I was able to engage. So I recovered, which, by the way, is I listened. It's still using one of my best words. And I was curious. And I asked her, instead of just wallowing in the failure or making it even worse by stomping my feet or making her even more, I wouldn't say that she was defensive. She was just obviously stating the realities of the situation. But I was able to recover by by first taking a moment to reset, and with the help of my father, just really using my curiosity and my ability to listen, and then come up with a creative solution.
That's excellent. Thank you. That makes perfect sense. And a part of that is important, is that there was an open dialogue in between there where at least you could talk about it and deal with it.
Correct. But she gave me that opportunity was mine. So she gave it, she basically conveyed her feelings and told me that if I don't change, to find a different program. But then she left it up to me to keep those lines of communication open.
Do you want to know? And
other people would have shut down.
Another side bit. My son was he went to the pros right out of high school. He didn't go to college, and in high school he had a 4.2 GPA, and so all the teams thought he was going to go to college, but he just said, It is so easy to get high grades because all you have to do is look at the core curriculum of the teacher. What is the teacher interested in? He said sometimes he would look and said, homework is 60% of the grade, so I just did all my homework. It just, it was simple, and it came less to exams and all of those, rather than fulfilling these perfunctory tasks, and he ended up with a 4.2 doing that, following that protocol. So there are times that you have to follow protocol that maybe not be your utmost desire or goal, but you have to follow it anyway.
You gotta learn to play the game.
Gotta learn to play the game. You know what I'm curious about? I have a couple more questions, and we're as we near our time here. I love, Haley, I love the way you have learned the lesson or used the lessons you learned from high professional athletes to high performance professional athletes to deal with corporate leaders and upcomers in business. As we've talked about, fear of failure is one of life's most difficult realities. Some manage it and some crumble. Is recovery the difference between managing it and crumbling, or is there more to it than that?
No, I like that. I do like that. I think the recovery, right, that next shot, next game, onward, upward, forward, and then, with the idea that you'll go back to it and learn from it later on. But I do believe that's the difference between someone continuing to progress and someone crumbling.
Okay.
Absolutely, because we get caught in that spiral. You make one mistake, and then another, and then another, and then another, and you just sink further and further into that quicksand of despair. And it's really hard to get out of it. In fact, we tend to just go harder and longer and faster and sink even further and further and deeper. So I do believe that's a crumbling effect.
Yeah,
being able to recover.
I have a friend who's an executive coach, and he writes on strategies and saying that typically we will have as we're producing something new, we have strategy A, strategy B, strategy C, and sort of our recovery strategies in case the first ones don't fit. And he says, so we try the first strategy, and if first strategy A, we try the first strategy A, and then he puts a small a over the top of that. Then he says, well, we try strategy A again, and A just keeps getting larger and larger. We just keep trying the same thing over and over and over again, rather than actually changing strategies and saying, what I'm doing won't work. And you are really emphasizing that we need to have options and different approaches to our issues.
We do, but there is a caveat to that. So,
oh, good.
Interestingly enough, this week I was working with someone, a client of mine, whose business, not sport, and I had actually given him a task. I asked him to come up with 5 options. And this was 2 weeks ago, and this week he came to me and he goes, Haley, I put down 2, but I got to be honest, I was looking at a 3rd and then a 4th, and I found myself, the more options I created, the more doubt I was having for the ones that I initially started. And I haven't even really focused on them yet. So it's an important point. We have to know ourselves. So yes, I think that options are good, because I think that's life. But we have to understand that even though we may have come up with 3 options, like A, B, and C, as you said, with your friend executive coach, even though there might be option A, option B, option C, when we're on option A, that is all that we see right now. Like we have to be 100% committed, because only then will we know if it really didn't work. We can't kind of go back and forth. You got to commit to option A. And then if that is completely ruled out, because now we're just making it bigger and bigger and bigger, then you move to option B and you commit to that, so that there's not a lot of confusion or doubt or fear. You're just going to commit to it, and then there comes a point in time where you realize, no, this is no longer worth the effort. We need to, as a big word right now is pivot. We need to pivot.
Yeah, and that's all based on metrics. Whatever, and metrics don't have to be statistics. They're just they're signs of success, and are you doing it? I think that's I like that. If you're going to try A, you don't think, well, I've always got options B and C. You think, this is it. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm headed. And then you have an annual or semi-annual or whatever your review is to see how well you're doing that.
I did this yesterday for myself. I can quickly share with exercise if I have the time. It's an interesting story. We went mountain biking yesterday, and it's a route that goes into the mountains out and back, but there is an option to take the road home. And I really wasn't feeling my best self. And so I said to myself as I was getting ready, I'm going to go. Option A is, go out and back the same way I came. Once I get to the other side, then I can assess whether I'm going to take the road back and let everyone else go their way, or whether I'm going to turn around and continue. So I was focused to commit to one, and then I got to a place, and then I got to reassess. And then once I made my choice, I didn't even think about option B. I committed again to option A.
That makes perfect sense. I think we can only head one direction at a time. If you're trying to head 1.5 or one halfway, you're not going to get there. You've got to do your research and pick your direction, but then be pliable enough to know after a certain amount of time, if this is not being successful, then you may have to do some sort of triage on it and see what we can do to do it better. I want to move one question, the final question that I think is something that you hit my heart on yesterday when we talked, and you talked about it is important for all people, whether it be athlete, business person, whatever job you may do. It has to do with the right motivation. Can you talk to me about the right motivation?
I hope I'm going to go where you want me to go.
Trophy or heart?
Yeah, okay, we're right there. Okay, yes. So when it comes to motivation, if we really narrow it down and get simple, there's 2 types. There's extrinsic and there's intrinsic. So for me, in my world and in my consulting practice, I look at extrinsic motivation as the trophy. What you want to get out of this pursuit. Is it paycheck? Is it qualifying for this team? Is it verbal praise? Is it a promotion? Is it losing this much body fat? Whatever that might be, that's the trophy. And it's important. I like my trophies. I like the trophy, put them on your mantle. But in addition to the trophy motivation, we need the heart motivation, and the heart is intrinsic. That is feeling like you are competent, not what you achieve, but through the process. You feel like you're effective, you're learning something, you're engaged, you're competent. It means that you feel that you have choice. There's autonomy. You are choosing to be where you are right now. Maybe not 100%, but some aspect of it, you have personal ownership. It also means that you feel like you belong. You are connected. You are related to a group, to a community, to whatever it is that you are pursuing. That's heart. So that no matter whether you get the trophy or not, as long as you have heart, that prolongs, that is the ultimate motivator. Without heart, we become burnt out. And burnout is a really big thing right now. A lot of people are talking about burnout. One of the reasons, there are many, but one of the reasons why we experience burnout is because we are so focused on the trophy, we lose sight of the heart.
I'm silent because you're causing me to think. Thank you for causing my silence. I think that's a brilliant distinction. Now, there is overlap, is there not?
I don't know.
If I'm successful extrinsically, then does that not somehow enhance my internal satisfaction?
Oh yes, absolutely. The heart grows and grows when you get more trophies, and when you fall in love with something, perhaps you want to pursue bigger and greater trophies. I think they do. Yeah, they do definitely play on each other. They are equally important. When it comes to balance, a lot of the times we think about work-life balance. I don't know if I want to focus on work-life balance, but I do want to focus.
I don't know that I believe in it, so
I don't either. But this heart motivation, we just need to really hold on to. And I will tell you, the way the world is, trophy, it's inevitable. We all want the trophy. It's the way of life. Kids start to practice and learn and play sports, not for the trophy initially. They're doing it because they love to learn and they feel like, whoa, I'm getting better, but not for a trophy purpose, just for the enjoyment, the pure satisfaction of playing and learning, and they're belonging, they're making friends, and they, they're getting to choose certain things. And then somewhere along the lines, the trophy becomes the primal focus, the primary focus. And if we're not careful, we lose sight of the heart. So we need to really focus on that heart. The trophy takes care of itself, I believe, but we need to really make sure that we've got heart.
I love it. Without getting too deeply into it, my listeners know I'm very strong into silence and meditation and contemplation, and that's always accessing the heart, accessing where I'm at, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, how does it fit with my value system, and how is it working. So that's a discipline that I do that I would highly suggest. I think what you're talking about is a mental discipline that would be helpful for listeners to apply in their own lives. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. 100% in agreement.
Dr. Haley Perlus, you are awesome. This has been one of my surprisingly favorite shows. You are so interactive, so bright and cheery, and with such great insight. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for those kind words and for inviting me onto the show.
So hang on and we'll talk later. And for right now, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. Until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.